Thank you for listening to the Nubian Kinetic Spectrum Inc. channel. This is just a brief commentary. The contents of this commentary is from J.R. Eclipse, published on April 23rd, 2019.
Do you have anything in this book about the Olmecs?
No, not really. I mentioned them briefly. I explored the Olmec mystery in considerable depth.
Can you explain that to people that maybe
in the Fingerprints of the Gods? Yes. So it's considered to be the earliest high culture of Central America. Everybody's heard about the Aztecs. Everybody's heard about the Maya. But before the Aztecs and before the Maya, there were a culture who are referred to as the Olmecs. Again, we don't know what they called themselves. That's what the Aztecs called them. They called them the Olmecs, and it means the rubber people because that rubber producing area of Mexico. They worked in giant megalithic constructions. That what they're most famous for is these huge carved human heads, which can be on a scale.
And the Olmecs are also known to be associated with a tribe in Africa, possibly the Mende.
And which have curious features, which have been interpreted variously as Polynesian, African, don't look like classic to 20 to 25 tons in weight, and which have curious features, which have been interpreted variously as Polynesian, African, don't look like classic Native American features. But one of the things I've realized is that there is no classic Native American feature. That Native Americans are have a very complex genetic story with very many different elements brought into it.
Isn't African history and genetics complex compared to the average person on this planet, and it's been that way for how long? See, y'all don't want to really tell what y'all know. And when I say y'all, I'm talking about anybody, any race, any color, male or female, that is hiding and withholding our history from us, which is facts, y'all. When we say our history, we're talking about facts. We're talking about real science. We're talking about real, authentic world history. We don't want more than what is proven, or I guess we supposedly, in a lack of term, deserve. We're not trying to act like more than whatever, okay? But give us our due respects, give our ancestry its respect to bless and heal this planet. Okay, I'm just going to say that. Give our history, our ancestors the history they deserve for the contributions of humanity.
African don't look like classic Native American features. But one of the things I've realized is that there is no classic Native American feature. That Native
the African presence is very belittled.
Genetic story with very many different elements brought into it, and we shouldn't be necessarily surprised by the supposedly non-Native American look of these Olmec.
What do we think those helmets were that they were wearing?
Nobody knows, because no physical example of such a helmet has ever been found, just like no physical example of an Egyptian pharaoh's crown has ever been found. All we see is the stone reproductions of them.
Do they universally wear these helmets?
They pretty much all wear these helmets in the Olmec stonework. There's another
but it's Hispanics that look like that
figure from La Venta, one of the Olmec sites, which is the earliest ever image of a plumed or feathered serpent. The feathered serpent is a famous icon in Central America. Quetzalcoatl, who's
the Olmec heads ain't something I think we need to focus on. There is more evidence, more evidence of Asians and Africans coming hundreds of years before the Spanish, the Atlantic slave trade, at least hundreds, and further back than that.
That's the earliest image of a plumed serpent.
They just
in
not
the
telling us.
Americas. And sitting in the middle of it, and I made a big deal out of this because this pyramid of Kukulkan, which is just another name for Quetzalcoatl at Chichen Itza, where on the spring equinox a shadow effect creates the image of a serpent coiling down the stairway and joining with the carved head of the serpent. There's the image from La Venta. That's the earliest image of a plumed serpent in the Americas. And sitting in the middle of it, and I made a big deal out of this, because it is a big deal in Magicians of the Gods, sitting in the middle of it is this human figure who's holding this strange bag in his hand. And it's just a fact that those identical bags are found in ancient Sumer in the hands of individuals who were considered to be civilization bringers, and they also show up on Pillar 43 at Göbekli Tepe. I call them man bags. And in that case, at Göbekli Tepe, we know they're at least 11,600 years old. So I wonder if we're looking at a sort of badge of office of a group of civilizers who traveled around the world trying to bring back to life a lot.
When I interrupt.
Who taught Sumer their technology? Who taught Göbekli Tepe their technology? Who taught South Americans their technology? It already been debunked that, I question why do they keep saying Mesopotamia is the first to create an urban civilization, the first scientists. And I may be over-exaggerating. I know I am because they're not. I don't agree with it. And it's been debunked. But why Mesopotamia is the first civilization, the first? Why do they keep going to Mesopotamia? Like Mesopotamia. Now they want to hold on to Göbekli Tepe. Then they want to hold on to Stonehenge. These are very suspect and questionable, especially not only to our scholars, but to inquiring minds like the Nubian Kemetic Spectrum Inc. channel.
And they also show up on Pillar 43 at Göbekli Tepe. I call them man bags. And in that case, at Göbekli Tepe, we know they're at least 11,600 years old. So I wonder if we're looking at a sort of badge of office of a group of civilizers who traveled around the world trying to bring back to life a lot.
When I interrupted you to talk about Quetzalcoatl, what were you about to say?
The life of us who?
I'm in California, I've been smoking lots of dope.
The life of us who? The life of us who? The life of us who?
The serpent guy you're talking about.
Before Quetzalcoatl, before that, I have another question.
Who y'all talking about? The life of
We're
us?
talking about the genetics of these people that live in Native Americans. That they vary widely, but the Olmecs seem to have very similar features: the thick lips, the wide noses. Why do we think that is?
Well, this is part of a curious mystery that is not unconnected to the genetic mystery. It's been known by archaeologists for quite a long time that there are anomalous skulls in parts of Brazil.
We think that is.
But yeah, who do Hispanics get their features from?
Curious mystery that
Who do
is
the
not
modern
connected
Hispanics
to
get their
the
features
genetic
from?
mystery. It's been known by archaeologists
The
for
modern
quite a long
Spanish.
time that there are
Their
anomalous
features from in
skulls
South America.
in parts of Brazil, which appear to show very strongly Polynesian or African features, very much like the features that we see on the Olmec heads. And a number of archaeologists who got into trouble with their colleagues for this have used that to argue many years ago, 30, 40 years ago, that
Impressive
the settlement
technology.
story of the Americas is much more
Impressive
complicated
technology they
than we've realized. And what the DNA is doing is it's telling us that there was something really weird happened with settlement. You see, what happened with those African or Polynesian-looking skulls was that they were tested for DNA when DNA technology was not as advanced as it is today. And what that DNA showed was that they were more closely related to modern Native Americans than they are to any other people in the world. So the notion that there was some connection with Polynesia or Africa was dismissed. But now that we have very firm evidence of an Australasian genetic signal, Australian Aborigines, Papua New Guinea, Melanesians, with those kind of features. Now that we have the genetic evidence that is found in the Amazon, we have to go back to that old evidence and reconsider it.
Wow. Yeah,
Those kind of features. Now that we have the genetic evidence that is found in the Amazon, we have to go back to that old evidence and reconsider it. Malaysian genetic signal, Australian Aborigines, Papua New Guinea, Melanesians, with those kind of features. Now that we have the genetic evidence that is found in the Amazon, we have to go back to that old evidence and reconsider it.
wow. Yeah, I would love to find out what that is. They've always fascinated me. The Olmecs, it's always been such a strange image, the large heads with the helmets on them, and how, do they universally look like that? I mean,
All of the features are very, very similar.
wow,
They're very,
like that? I mean,
all of the features are very, very similar.
Wow.
They're very, very, very similar.
and always with the helmets.
And almost always, I won't claim that every single Olmec head has a helmet on it, because I think I've seen one that didn't. It's quite a while ago since I explored the Olmec area. But what's fascinating about them is they are supposedly the first high civilization of Central America, that they create structures on a massive scale.
What about
You can
Norte
see
Chico?
connections between them and the later Maya. That whole mystery of the Mayan calendar was clearly inherited from the Olmecs. It wasn't something the Maya made up. The Olmecs used that same symbolism. So the Mayan calendar is actually an Olmec calendar. And if we then consider the possibility that the Olmecs may just be the latest, the earliest surviving manifestation of that calendar, it could go back much further than that.
The Joe Rogan. Shout out.
Parentally inherited. This is a Y chromosome passed from father to son, son to son. This particular DNA marker here, PN2, is sort of the background, and that's what this means, it's the background of 73% of all the peoples in Africa today. 73%. The PN2 is found in West Africa and sub-equatorial Africa. The P2 or M2 as it's called. This M35, 215M35, is what you find in the Horn of Africa up to Egypt and over to Morocco. It corresponds to the 5 and the 11 in the previous slide. This is the father of both groups of Africans. This binds the continent together, okay? So although you have Berbers with blue eyes and blonde hair, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera, they share, for the most part, this PN2 ancestry with people in West and tropical Africa. This is the modern population.
They share it,
And
though.
they share much less of the M89, which comes off the tree, in another way. I'm going to finish here. This is an old slide. I'll just stop.
Just listen. I'm not going to, this is brief. The misrepresentation of human variation, the myth of race. El Sarao, published on December 11, 2020. I suggest y'all check this out, this video. Black professor tells truth about ethnicity in ancient Egypt and North Africa. Very interesting. And it helps me to understand why, not just this video, but what I've done some brief research on in Morocco and stuff, and what I've heard from Berber people that I know that study, but why Africans don't like to be referred to as Arabs. I can even more so get the understanding. I don't have to go to West Africa or South Africa to understand why, or East Africa, east of modern Egypt. So, I've talked to people, read some things, and seen some videos. So I suggest we just start not focusing on other things, but as much to a point, but study our own history. Question everything. Thank you.